What's up, YouTube? This is Guy. You're watching the JustBlueFish live stream, joined, as always, by my friend and cohort, AB from Watch Collecting Strategy. How you doing today, AB?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there, I guess. I wanted to kick this off real quickly. It's the evening before Thanksgiving, so anybody watching or listening after the fact, happy Thanksgiving. What do you got planned for tomorrow? Anything special, or do you celebrate?
Um, Nothing special. Probably gonna have some turkey, gravy, all the good
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I think my plan is probably to figure out how to avoid the crowded family scenarios. But I know that's awful. People are probably happy to spend time with their families. I can't deal with all of the hectic chaos though. But yeah,
Great way
uh,
to start a stream, man.
exactly. So what we are thinking about starting with today, I posted a video. I assume you had a chance to watch it, right, AB? Talking
Mhm.
about the thing that I see all the time, people as Baselworld gets closer and closer saying, should I wait for the next Baselworld to see if Rolex releases a new watch? And particularly what my video was speaking about was the Submariner. And yeah, I thought maybe we could kick off our live stream kind of talking about that from a couple of different angles. Before we do that, though, let's take a quick look at the comments and see who's with us today. We have Chi-Town, California, Wrist Ross, Race Row. I don't know how to pronounce that. Calum K, Floridian. We got Blended Whiskey, Time in the UK, Adam Levinson, and Rainer S just rolling in there. Hey, how's everyone doing tonight? Thanks for joining us. So,
I wanted to mention really quick. I had my laptop so I could see the comments, but my laptop just died, so I can't really see any comments. So you might have to just pull up a lot of comments. I can't see anything.
no worries. I always pop them on the screen when we get something worth talking about. Mike, Mike says, "Can we talk synthesizers?" I mean, I actually used to own quite a few synths back in the day, but no, probably not on this stream. I think we should start a separate channel for music-related discussions. So yeah, the topic at hand. I don't know if everyone in the comments here watching has seen it yet. If they haven't, I posted a new video today talking about the topic of whether or not people should wait for the next announcements of released watches when we're getting close to that time of year. And yeah, let me kick this off and give the floor to you, AB. Vis-a-vis that video, how do you feel about people that pose this question? Because I see it all the time, like every year leading up to Baselworld. It's like, oh, I want to get a Submariner, but should I wait? Should I wait? What's your take on that topic?
So I watched your video, and actually, you had really good points. I just think there's two types of people when it comes to this subject. First of all, there's the guys who always want the newest thing. Like for example, um, in the case of the Batman, there was a good reason because there was an upgraded movement with the 70-hour power reserve and so on. There's two types of guys: the guy who wants the newest thing just for the sake of having the newest hype, and then there's the other guy who wants something because there's actually something upgraded. You know what I mean? Now, the
Sure.
guy who is going after hype, I think he's gonna always wait for the new thing, right? He wants a Submariner right now, but he's worried that next year there's gonna be a new Submariner. Let's say somehow they don't upgrade the movement, there's nothing new about it, maybe a new color. He's gonna wait for the next thing and the next thing, and he's just gonna keep constantly waiting for the next thing. And I kind of have, me and you spoke about this a while ago before I bought my Submariner, um, about whether or not I would be disappointed if they came out with the new Submariner, which was supposed to be this year. I would have been disappointed or a bit upset if they have a new movement with a higher power reserve. But if I'm that guy who's just waiting for the new thing, I just think it's not an iPhone. You don't need to keep getting one every single year. You know what I mean? They're solid watches. The Submariner is iconic. They will update it. They might make the slimmer lugs. I don't think they will. I know a lot of people are speculating that they will. I personally think that they made it beefier for a reason, which I'm not going to get into. But yeah, I think they're just setting themselves up for disappointment. Not to mention they can't get it anyway, right?
Well, yeah, that was one of the key points that I touched on. It's if it comes out, let's just say tomorrow, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna just trot down to the authorized dealer and go ahead and pick one up. No, no, you're not. As a matter of
Good
fact,
luck.
we got a comment here from Romy360. When it comes to Rolex, I don't think anyone should wait for the newest release. How do you know how long you'll have to wait? Years? Question mark. And yeah, even if the newest release does comes out, I mean, I think you could approach this from two angles. His comment: if you're waiting, they might not release anything for years. We don't know for sure that whatever we're hoping comes this coming year. And the number two, if something does come, you're probably waiting for years to get your hands on it anyway. You know, I mean, that was one of the key points from my video, and that always makes me kind of shake my head and wonder what people are thinking when they pose this question. I think what it is it's people that don't really want the current watch. They just want the current cool watch, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I actually, when I was thinking about it, there's a lot of things. It's very obvious that right now, with the amount of press, for example, that's after the watch collecting community, you have people like GQ. You even have the New York Times, who made an article about the most iconic watches. I don't know if I sent you that article. I don't think so, but they were talking about the most iconic watches. And with a lot of these sort of mainstream media covering watches, obviously there's a lot of people coming into the hobby, which is not bad for what we like, but they're coming into the hobby for the hype. You know what I mean? You have, for example, the Timex Q that just came out. I'm sorry. I mean, it is a cool looking watch and so on, but if it wasn't so hyped everywhere, I mean, it's a cool reissue, but it wasn't anything crazy. Like, people were going crazy over them. They couldn't even get them. It got sold out immediately, and people were going on wait lists for this Timex. You know what I mean? Cool watch. I just think that the hype kind of made it even more desirable. You know what I mean? Look at the Blue Alpinist. When as soon as Hodinkee released it, what was that website? It's the website that kind of hypes everything. Hypebeast covered the Alpinist. All of a sudden, it became. You look at the pre-owned market, Alpinists were selling for upwards $2,000.
Are you talking about the original green Alpinist or that new blue one?
The blue one, because that's what Hypebeast covered. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, this is the cool new thing, and then that's kind of what everybody's after. Same with Rolex. Now, I'm one who's kind of for Rolex doing what they're doing for many reasons. One of the biggest reasons for me is, you know me, you know that I love a lot of watches that people don't really care about, and by Rolex doing this, they are kind of forced to care about it. Yeah. You know what I mean? But with this topic,
that's actually something that we're going to touch on here eventually. I think is I want to get your opinion on what people should maybe consider instead of Rolex, but we'll save that for a few minutes from now because you're on a good train of thought. So keep rolling. But if I forget, remind me about that.
I'll try not to forget. But yeah, when it comes to Rolex, I mean, Rolex they're not really tool watches anymore like they used to be. So in a sense, they've always been hyped, but you know, human nature, you want what you can't get, right? For example, somebody asked in the previous live stream, why aren't they just so popular? It's because we can get it. You know what I mean? I promise you, if they just become hard to get, everybody will want it. You know what I mean? It's just human nature. And that's what I feel like the guys who are asking you, hey, should I wait for the new Submariner? A lot of them, maybe they're waiting for the new Caliber. I highly doubt that most of them are. Like for me, for example, I would wait for a new Caliber for the increased power reserve. But I just think they're after the new hype. You know what I mean? Or after a quick buck if they could get it from the AD.
Yeah, well, now let me ask you this. This was one of the things that I had mentioned in that video. What exactly are we waiting for in a new release of, we'll just say the Submariner, since that was the topic? I mean, is it just the movement? Because I don't really care. The 3135 movement that's in the standard Rolex right now is an excellent movement. I mean, does an extra power reserve really help somebody? What's the 3135 got? 48 hours? Does 70 really matter? To me, it wouldn't. But I'm the type of person that puts my watch on and keeps it on for generally weeks at a time, and then I'll put it away and wear something else. So maybe I'm not the right person to ask. What are people hoping for? Why wait? I know a lot of people are waiting for the potential possibility of a redesign of, in particular, the super case, but I don't think that's coming. I mean, from your perspective, if you were on the fence saying like, I don't really love the current model and I kind of hope they do a new model, what is it that you're waiting to see?
Okay, so I don't think it'll be fair if I give a general answer of what I think people are waiting for. I'll give what I'm waiting for. Now, you know that I'm the least person who actually cares about Rolex. A lot of people called me out on that actually in my State of the Watch collection, because I only talked about it for like 10 seconds. But what am I waiting personally for from Rolex? First of all, a slimmer case would be nice. However, I feel like they beefed up the case, even though they kept it at 40 millimeters, because people that buy Rolexes are not like the majority of people that buy Rolexes aren't us as watch collectors, as enthusiasts. The people who are buying Rolexes are buying it for the quote unquote flex. You know what I mean? And by beefing up the case like that, they could keep it at a wearable size of 40 millimeters, but there's a lot more presence for people who want to show off having a Rolex. You know what I mean? If they slim down the case, I guarantee you they're going to start releasing stuff in 42 millimeters, aka the new Yachtmaster. The new Yachtmaster, they kind of slimmed down the case a little, but to keep that presence, what did they do? They put it in a 42 millimeter case. You know what I mean?
Right.
So what I'm waiting for personally, I've already expressed this, a new Smurf in stainless steel. That would be I would sell my watch. I would trade my watch for a Smurf stainless steel. Maybe a new caliber. Now, like you said, the power reserve doesn't matter that much. I guess it's just something for me personally. Like I feel inside, okay, I have the more like the caliber that has more power reserve, but it kind of doesn't really matter, right? When it comes to, if we look at the pre-owned market on the Batman, the Oyster case, as of last time I checked, probably a month ago, was actually fetching more than the Jubilee, the new one with the 70-hour power reserve. So
yeah,
obviously people don't care about the caliber itself. They just care about rarity. You know what I mean? Which, if you see the numbers of how much Rolex actually produces, nothing is rare. Even Paul Newmans aren't rare. Vintage dealers will pretend it's rare, but it's really not. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people, just contact Eric Koo. He can get you a Paul Newman immediately. You know what I mean? But yeah, the only thing I'm looking for personally is a Smurf in stainless steel.
Tennessee Mike, fear of losing out is real, and the marketing experts know it. And that was something that we kind of covered in that video. Is I think a lot of people are just obsessed with the idea of, if I buy this thing today, I won't be able to buy that thing tomorrow. And yeah, that is a real thing, but you have to at least keep things in perspective. You're not going to be able to buy that thing tomorrow anyway, because it's going to be in such high demand that unless you're a highball, holy roller, got all of the money in the world, big time spender, you're not going to get offered that watch. So, you're tricking yourself if you think you're going to be missing out. That's just my opinion on it.
Yeah. And, I 100% agree with Mike, even though I feel like a lot of marketing experts in the watch industry could use a little bit of improvement. Besides Rolex, of course. Rolex, their entire brand, in my opinion, not just in the watch world, but Rolex, their marketing, like they're the number one in marketing. You know what I mean? Whether it's watches or anything else, like that's their brand. I have friends of mine who know what a Rolex is, even though they've never seen one. They don't even know what it looks like. You know what I mean? And that just proves marketing genius.
Yeah, I've mentioned that before. I bet if you lined up a half dozen watches in front of the average person and were able to somehow take the name off of the dial and said, point to the Rolex, 99 out of 100 isn't going to know which is which.
However, what I will say about fear of losing out, that's not Rolex's game at the moment. Rolex's game when it comes to marketing is they want people to be, they're basically, you can't have it. So that's why people want it. That's more of their marketing. The fear of losing out is what Omega's been trying to do, limited edition after limited edition. It's obviously not working. You know what I mean? That is, in my opinion, what the fear of losing out is, which is another marketing strategy that I completely hate. But Rolex's game right now is just you can't have it. That's why you
No.
really want it, you know?
Yeah. No, Rolex isn't capitalizing on the fear of missing out thing, but a
Mm-mm.
consequence of them releasing watches once a year around the beginning of the year gets people into that mode. This isn't by design
Mm-hmm.
from Rolex. This is just a side effect of the fact that nobody knows when Rolex is going to be putting out something new. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's not part of their master plan, but it is happening to
Mm-hmm.
a certain degree because
Did
of
did
the way that they do
Rolex
things.
did Rolex pull out of Baselworld? They didn't, right? I think
No,
they're the
Seiko
only
did.
ones. They're the only ones left. Actually, I think they might pull out. The only reason they wouldn't, actually, I don't know why they wouldn't. Seiko and Grand Seiko just pulled out like a month ago, which is insane. You know, that's actually extremely big news. I don't know how next year's gonna be when it comes to the releases, but that's a different topic.
I briefly to touch on that. Why wouldn't Rolex pull out? I don't know. This is purely 100% guess on my part. I suspect that Rolex probably doesn't really pay to set up a
Hmm.
booth. I think that the people that manage the Baselworld understand that they need Rolex there, and Rolex is probably on a completely different tier of negotiated rates when it comes to that. Just to guess, I'm sure that they have certain incentives just by showing up because in
Marketing.
in in all aspects of the watch industry doesn't look the same without Rolex, and by
Hmm.
virtue, Baselworld doesn't look the same without Rolex. So I'm sure those promoters understand this, and
Yeah.
it would be in their best interest to make sure Rolex does stay.
Yeah, they're probably holding on to Rolex with their dear life. Like, once Rolex is gone, that's it. There's no reason to have a Baselworld except for jewelers, um, and even then, like I think watches. I can't remember the percentage, but watches was basically making a Baselworld because people tend to forget that it's also jewelry in Baselworld. You know what I mean? It's not just watches.
Yeah,
Um, but with Seiko, especially Seiko, Grand Seiko, Omega, the entire Swatch group, everybody leaving. I don't know what they're gonna do. They're probably finally realizing that online is the best way to communicate with people. You know what I mean? They only SIHH just changed their. By the way, I don't know if people know this. There's no more SIHH next year. What SIHH was basically, you have to have a special invite to go to that event, which kind of sucked for everyone else. You know what I mean? Only guys who retailers and very special people in the industry got to go. But now they changed it to Watches and Wonders, if I remember correctly. And now they opened it up to the public because they're finally realizing that, they should probably showcase their watches to people who are going to buy it as well, not just retailers. Took them long enough to realize that, but they're doing that. Um, a lot of people like Swatch Group and stuff, I feel like they finally realized that communicating with people online, even just collaborating with Hodinkee, right? If I was, I'm just gonna say my opinion. Now, this might not be a good strategy, but if I had to guess, if I was running Swatch Group, what I would do is I would collaborate with someone like Hodinkee, Revolution, and so on, and I would collaborate with them a specific day for them to announce and keep hyping up until that day that this is where we're going to present all of our new watches. You want to know what's coming out new from Omega, for example? Stay tuned. July, blah blah blah. Um, we're going to have all of our releases here on Hodinkee. You know what I mean? The biggest online magazine so far, and I think they would reach the same amount of people. You know what I mean? If not, like, yeah, the same amount of people as they would in paying millions of dollars going to Baselworld. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um,
and that's probably the future of the way this is all going to work. I think I've heard other people
Hopefully.
suggest that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Let's get into some more comments here. Mike, he's egging me on. What synths did you have? Let's talk a synth or two. All right, real quick. I had an Access Virus KB and a Corgam S2000. Uh, Continuing on topic though. Let's see. Mark R34 Rolex are making people wait for a reason, which is that everyone wants them. You know, I wonder about
Hmm.
this topic, and it's a little bit off topic, but is Rolex really trying to make people wait, or are they just physically at capacity and the demand is far outseated what they can supply? I'm not 100% sure on this. I don't know either way, and I don't feel confident enough to make a judgment call and say like, yeah, obviously they're doing this on purpose. I just don't know. I mean, supply and demand is a real thing, right? And I've been told that they're building a bigger production facility, and I've been told that they're increasing their production every year by some small percentage, 5%, let's say. You know, so what do you think? Is this part of the plan, or are they doing the best they can?
Let's say that was true, that was part of the plan. I think it's a happy coincidence, and they found out the result from holding stock or not having enough production, whatever it is. They found out the result. People are going crazy. Rolex would be kind of stupid to up the production. You know what I mean? Because they're trying to protect their brand as a luxury item, like an aspirational brand. You know, that's their market. Forget about collectors. We're so small in their market. They don't care about us. They want everybody to be like, someday I'm going to own a Rolex. You know what I mean? When it becomes
Right.
so accessible to people, they will lose that in the long run. You know what I mean? Kind of like if you have Mercedes, for example, or let me think of a luxury brand, Aston Martin. You know, I'm not going to talk too technical about cars, but let's say Aston Martin decided to bring out cars that are $20,000 rather than their entry DB9 or whatever, like $70,000, $80,000. Let's say they decided to bring out cars for $20,000. Nobody will be like, someday I'm going to own an Aston Martin. You know what I mean? Kind of the same thing with Rolex, but in a different way, that Rolex would be kind of stupid to up their production to make their watches easier to get, because maybe it was a happy coincidence that they found out that if they do it this way, people will go back to that feeling that, oh my gosh, I want a Rolex. You know what I mean? Someday when I'm successful, I'm going to have a Rolex. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I just feel like after the result, they're not going to up production, you know?
Right.
At least they'd be stupid too, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I honestly don't know. Question from Romy360. Could you make the switch over to the Omega Seamaster if they cleaned up a few things? Yeah, I absolutely could. I mean, I don't like the newest version of the Seamaster. They did some things size-wise that are not super appealing to me, but I very seriously considered buying the prior generation Seamaster, and I think it's a great watch. I mean, are there things about it that I don't love? Sure. There are things about the Submariner that I don't love. There's things about every watch that I don't love. So yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, AB, you have a mid-size Seamaster in your collection, if I'm not mistaken, don't you?
I do. I love it. It's a
If
great watch, actually.
Right. So I mean, if push came to shove, I mean, you have both a sub and a Seamaster, but if push came to shove and it was like, oh, you just can't get your hands on the Submariner for whatever reason, you'd probably be perfectly happy with having that as your dive watch, I'm guessing.
I do. If they, because the question was if they cleaned up things. Now, I know a lot of people, every time I post a Seamaster video or talk about it, they always complain about the crown that's in the 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I think if that's what he means by cleaned up, I don't think that would be a good move for Omega, because, I mean, whether or not people find it ugly, it's iconic to the Seamaster. You know what I mean? Take off that extra crown, it will honestly look like most dive watches. Push came to shove, I probably would go with a Seamaster. When it comes to dive watches, maybe, I don't know, because I genuinely thought about this, and for around, because this Submariner is going for like what, 10 grand now, something like that.
Yeah.
I would save up a little bit more, maybe get the Royal Oak diver, because I don't know, the Seamaster is a great watch. I've had the Seamaster, the mid-size one, for a long time. I just don't see it as an alternative to the Submariner. I just find them very, very, very different. But I know I'm in the minority here. I just can't see it. I can't see why those two watches are against each other. Maybe because it's, you know, a battle since, you know, the 90s, since, you know, Rolex and Omega have always been against each other. That's why they pinned the Seamaster against the Submariner. But if you really look at both of them, they're very, very different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. We got Watch Display here. What's up, fellas? Hey, Watch Display. You should, I don't think I have your email. You should email me at justbluefish@gmail.com So I can get you to come on the live stream one day. We'd like to have you. What else do we got here in the comments? Chi-Town, Rolex will probably launch a new sub in Everrose. Now let's segue into this. Let's suppose we're operating in a reality where we think that Rolex will release a new Submariner at the next Basel Fair. And even if it's not the next one, it's irrelevant. When they do, it's not going to be a standard stainless steel black dial, black bezel Submariner. It's going to be probably something in precious metal. It's going to be not the standard quote unquote most affordable model. When they roll it out, I don't think, unless it's a relatively mundane update, like just a movement update. What's your take on that? What do you suspect that they would do when they do it?
I think they'll do like what they did with the GMT. I think they will release one stainless steel, one two-tone, and one solid gold. That I think they're going to use the same thing that they did with the GMT, because they came out with the root beer two-tone, root beer stainless steel, full gold, and then the Batman in stainless steel. I think they know that stainless steel is so precious right now that they're gonna have one in there that they're gonna like drive people crazy with, because they always have to have if I was Rolex, I would have one heavy hitter, and unfortunately the market is shifting towards stainless steel. A gold watch is not a heavy hitter anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think they will release at least one stainless steel, hopefully the Smurf, you know what I mean? But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really like the blue on the Smurf, but I think it would be wildly popular if they did release it in stainless steel. So it would be interesting. Maybe it would take some of the emphasis off of some of the other versions, which might be a good thing for people that just want something typical.
Yeah.
I
think it's gonna be go ahead.
I was going to go on to another comment, but finish your thought if you'd like to first.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think what they're gonna do with the Smurf, it's not gonna be completely blue. I think it's gonna be a black dial with a blue bezel. I think that would drive a lot of people crazy.
Yeah, that would be cooler than the blue on blue, I think. So we have a comment from Time in the UK. I have seen a few Sky Dwellers in the AD windows. People have been talking about this a lot, supposedly seeing watches show up at the ADs more often. I wonder, also, people have been saying for years now, and I wonder about this, they're choking the supply on stainless steel professional watches in order to sell other watches, be it Datejust, be it Sky Dwellers, not so much, because that one's actually kind of hard to find. But what do you think about that? Is there truth in the idea that they are limiting access to these popular watches in an effort to push other watches? And if so, why? To what end? I mean, let's just take, for example, a standard stainless steel Datejust, which costs roughly the same as a stainless steel Submariner. What benefit do they get from selling more Datejusts instead of just selling more Submariners?
So if I really think about it, if people are genuinely fine.
I got a text. I'm going to mute my phone. Sorry about that.
Oh, go ahead. So if people are genuinely seeing Sky Dwellers in AD windows or popular sports models, the only reason I can think of, and I think this is the most logical reason, is they went too far with holding stock to the point where people got really irritated. So it's kind of like fishing. They have to bait people with a few, you know what I mean, watches. I think that's what happened. I think they overdid it with holding the stock. So that's why they're putting a few sports models to bring people in. You know what I mean? Because
now let me ask you this though: who's holding the stock? Is it Rolex or is it the AD?
I think it is the ADs. You know what I mean?
That's my suspicion too. Is that the ADs are holding the stuff back? So if you're seeing something pop up, I think that's a sign that the ADs aren't moving stuff anymore, and they need to bring in some excitement and some attention.
I mean, that's the most logical thing. I mean, the AD buys their stock, right? Rolex already got their money. They don't care what you do with your stock, as long as you come back eventually and buy more stock. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's Rolex holding stock. I think maybe Rolex is not giving them as much stock. You know what I mean? That most likely is a factor, but I think they're getting enough stock, but ADs are holding the stock. I think there was probably a chain effect where one person did it and then it just started going, you know what I mean? There was probably a chain effect that happened without us realizing. But you know, they buy their stock. So Rolex already got their money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're just waiting for them to come back and get more stock, you know?
Well, that's something else that I've heard people say. Rolex is doing this to drive up the prices. I mean, Rolex really hasn't raised their prices very much in years. A couple small increases, like when the new GMT came out, but very
Yeah.
small.
I was wrong about that too, actually. I kind of suspected that. I jumped the gun when I was really like, when I definitely believed that. But I think their marketing team is smart enough to realize that their biggest goal right now is not sales. I mean, of course, sales is a big factor, but their biggest goal is to protect their name, is to
Right.
protect the
It's
Rolex
branding
name.
and image. Yeah.
hmm they have a big, they're up against a really, really big, what's it called, company right now. And that company is not Omega. That company is not blow up JLC or anyone. Their company is Apple. And they have to fight again. I don't care how people will be like, oh, I'd never wear an Apple Watch and stuff like that. If I go out right now, I'm gonna find 10 people wearing an Apple Watch for every one person wearing a Rolex. You know what I mean?
It could be closer to 100 people, actually. I mean, I wouldn't even bet on
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. So they have to do whatever they can to protect their name, to keep Rolex as the aspirational watch, because Apple Watches right now are somewhat aspirational, and people will be like, "Oh, it's only $400." Not to teenagers.
No,
Teenagers, you know what I
400
mean? And
bucks
stuff
is a
like
lot of money.
$400 is like, when I was younger, $400 I would have to save a long time. I would have to have like 5 jobs to get that money. You know what I mean? Like, it is, it's aspirational. So Rolex needs to maintain that, and Rolex doesn't want to lose everybody, because in a way, if Rolex doesn't do something, everybody will be like, oh, someday I'm going to own an Apple Watch. People will find it crazy now, but Apple Watches prices are going up. You know what I
Well,
mean? Eventually
yeah.
it will be like their phone is like $1,000 now, you
Well,
know?
I remember my wife telling me the story. She was over visiting with her sister, and her sister's got a couple kids. And one of the kids, who's I don't know exactly his age, maybe he was 10, maybe he was 12 at the time. He said, I think the iPhone 8 or 9 or the 10, I don't know, was the new iPhone. And he said, when I grow up, I'm going to get an iPhone 10. Like he said, specifically like this version and stuff. So like even young kids in their, like 10, 12 years old, they're like, yeah, I can't wait till I grow up, have money, and I can get an iPhone. And then they
Yeah,
probably are going to feel the same way about other devices. And
the Apple Watch.
yeah, the Apple Watch is a good example, obviously.
hmm
And they're not saying this about things like a Rolex or any other traditional mechanical watch.
Yeah, because this is why, what Rolex is doing, I completely support it. People, when I say the word, I support what Rolex is doing right now with their ADs. Yeah, it's making a lot of people mad, but people don't want to see the big picture. Literally, if Rolex doesn't do this, they will lose. You know what I mean? And when they lose, who knows what's going to happen to our hobby in the future? You know, maybe I'm going to be so old that I won't care anymore. But I love this hobby. I'm sure everybody in the comments loves this hobby. You do too. And brands like Rolex are the reason we still have this hobby. In fact, Rolex is the reason we still have the mechanical hobby. You know, Seiko too, sure, but Rolex is the reason we still have this mechanical collecting hobby of ours, you know? And if they
Yeah,
don't protect it, Apple Watch will crush them, and they have been crushing them. You know what I mean? Just look at statistics. Apple Watches are here, Rolex is here, you know?
yeah. I mean, in terms of traditional mechanical watches, Rolex is the 800-pound gorilla. But if Rolex is the 800-pound gorilla in wearables, then Apple is the 8,000-pound gorilla, right?
Exactly.
Let's hit some more comments here. You might know more about this than I do, because I don't really deal in like pre-owned watches and whatnot. But for popular Rolex watches like Submariner, Batman, Daytona, do pre-owned watch dealers also have wait lists for preferred customers, or that they call when they get these models, just like ADs do? I'm going to go out on a limb and say I suspect that they probably don't have wait lists so much as they just have people they know to get a hold of when they get something that they know somebody wants to buy. But I mean, you can look at a website like, I don't know, David SW. I mean, he's constantly got Daytonas for sale. So it if he doesn't have a client list of people that want to buy that watch, I would be shocked. And if that's the case, he has so many Daytonas that he can be at the luxury of just putting them up on the website whenever they come in, or he's not waitlisting. I don't know. But I know you have dealt with plenty of pre-owned dealers. Do you have any insight into how they operate in this regard?
Absolutely, they have a list of clients, because I mean, it's kind of ABC of owning any kind of store, right? Forget about watches. I'm selling, shoes. If I have clients that will for sure buy my shoes, I'm gonna call them first. You know what I mean? So of course they have like a list of clients, but someone like David SW, I mean, I don't know the guy personally. I have no idea how he's getting his stock. His stock is insane. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't even believe it anymore. But he probably has like a list of clients that he goes through, but eventually that list will get smaller and smaller once they have everything. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the
So
thing with someone like him is he just gets so many that he probably fills the orders faster than new requests are coming in. That would be
so
my guess.
I don't think they have wait lists. I think they just favor clients who are for sure going to buy something. I mean, it's everybody does that, right? If you have your own store, you're going to favor the person who's going to buy it immediately. Then once they're done going through the list, then they're going to go through whoever comes in first, So in a sense, they don't have a waiting list, but they do have a list of clients that are loyal to them, And that's what ADs have been trying to do. They've been trying to build relationships with people that will for sure buy their stock eventually. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Here's a comment. I haven't seen the video the Venetian Lion just talking about, but Eric from CMR released a video today. He feels that there's an increase in Rolex supply hitting the market, and scrolling through the comments, many folks are getting calls from their ADs. I mean, I keep hearing that. I've seen a lot of people. I haven't seen this video, but I've seen people saying things like the Rolex bubble is bursting or it's burst. I've heard people say that they're getting calls and they're seeing things in stock in stores. I haven't seen anything change down here in South Florida. I mean, how does it look up there in your area? Where are you? Like Daytona, if I'm not mistaken. Central Florida, is it any different, or is it?
So I'm going to answer his question. I haven't seen Eric's, I haven't seen his video. I know he's a really big dealer here in Miami. But if you really think about it, all this stock is showing up when? November, December, aka the end of the year, aka right before the new stuff is coming out. You know what I mean? AKA right when authorized dealers are supposed. It might be a conspiracy, but this is when they need to buy their stock. They need to move
right around holiday shopping season.
Right around where people buy the most of everything, watches, TVs, whatever it is. You know what I mean? But it's not a coincidence that this is all happening in the end of the year. I mean, at least it might be a conspiracy, but I mean, it's pretty obvious. They're gonna fill up on stock in the beginning of the year with the new stuff. They need to buy more stock. They need to push this old stock sometime, like eventually. You know what I mean? That's why I think that every time I read, hey, my authorized dealer is calling me and stuff like that, in my mind, at least, I'm 100% convinced it's because it's the end of the year. This happens every year with everything, like TVs, watches, whatever. They want to get rid of stock because there's new models coming out the next year. Cars. It's there's always this advertisement on the radio, end of the year car sale here in Ford. You know what I mean? Because they need to get rid of their cars now.
A comment here. My AD just delivered my Daytona and said there's no shortage and 6 months is the new normal. I haven't heard people are getting Daytonas inside of 6 months, but I mean, if that's true, then there is no shortage.
Man, I honestly, I'm just gonna say this. I don't trust what ADs say anymore. Every AD is saying something different. I believe people in the comments that their ADs are saying all of that, but every single comment I read about Rolex, their AD is saying something different. You know what I mean? Which makes sense because every AD is different, run by a different person. You know what I mean? I've had an experience where I told you this guy before, and I'm not really going to talk about it because it's a long story, where my AD was like, he thought I didn't know anything about watches, and he was straight up lying to me, pretending like oyster perpetuals and Datejust were rare. You know what I mean? And he was like, oh, you know, if you buy this one, because my parents were just looking at watches, if you buy this one, don't worry, I'll take care of you. I'll get you an oyster perpetual. And I just kind of burst it off, but in my mind, I'm like, is this dude like serious? Like, he's like, yeah, don't worry, like I'll get it for you. That's why I don't trust what ADs say anymore. I trust that people, what they're saying about ADs are true, but ADs, they can literally say whatever they want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they're all saying different stuff. You could ask 10 different people at 10 different places, what is your AD saying about this topic, and you're going to get 10 different stories.
Exactly.
We got Eric here. He joined us today. If you guys don't check out Eric's Loafers channel, you definitely should. He does some cool watch content. Thanks for coming in and watching today, Eric. Yeah, AB called me at like 6:20, and he's like, want to go live at 6:30? And I was like, dude, that's give me more than 10 minutes. Come on. So yeah, it was unplanned.
Oops, my bad.
Here's a question that is off topic or off Rolex topic, and it's okay. We can switch it up a little bit. Omega Seamaster Sapphire Sandwich or Grand Seiko Snowflake? I will give my 2 cents and say the Speedmaster.
Mm-hmm.
What's your pick of the two?
I'm gonna change his question. There's a new Speedmaster. I mean, not a new Speedmaster. There's a very underrated Speedmaster Sapphire Sandwich with a brown dial and a black bezel. I think I sent you guys this picture.
Sure.
Go for that one. Nobody is talking about it. That was a very silent release by Rolex. It looks like a vintage Speedmaster with a tropical dial. Definitely go with that one. And the Grand Seiko Snowflake, I'm very biased, but I would go with the SBGA 415, the USA collection. It has a much cooler dial, in my opinion. It is a winter edition. It's not technically a Snowflake. It wears a lot better than a Snowflake because it has a bezel-less case, the 44 GS case. I can't remember. Extremely comfortable, and I've tried on all of them, and this is by far the most comfortable Grand Seiko I've ever like experienced.
I'm super on the fence about these Grand Seikos with the bezel-less case, and I know you've been pushing it on me. You're like, get this one.
You have to get it.
I haven't seen them in person yet. I've only seen them in pictures, and if there's anything that I've learned, it is that you can't judge a watch solely on pictures. So I'm looking forward to seeing one, but yeah, I'm definitely a little leery.
I'll just say one thing about the bezel-less case. If you like 38mm watches, I do. The bezel-less case makes that 40mm wear like a 38, maybe a 39. It wears a lot smaller with enough, wrist presence for a lot of people who want quote unquote bigger watches. The Snowflake is 41mm. It looks a little awkward on the wrist, I think. Personally, the dial is beautiful. But the Snowflake I'm gonna be honest, the Snowflake on the wrist, like from far, it doesn't look like anything crazy. Like the dial looks plain white. You have to look really close to realize the texture.
Yeah, it just looks like a white dial unless you get up on it.
But
that's kind of the charm of it, though, isn't it? It's kind of like it's almost like a secret, right? Like nobody's gonna really notice it as you're wearing it, but and like, I mean, it's not an actual secret, but it's really kind of flashy without being loud, if that makes sense. I don't know.
It's iconic. That's the biggest factor to the Snowflake, is you're probably gonna get a better return if you go with the Snowflake. I'm just, I love Grand Seiko, and I think they make a lot of insane dials for me to settle on the Snowflake, for me personally. You know what I mean? They make the Mosaic dial, which was in the SBGM 413. I don't know, reference numbers. The 415, for example, if you look at it from far, it's also the same thing. It just looks like a gray dial, but the texture is just so insane. The spring, the SBGA 413, there's just a lot of options, to the point where I feel like the only way I would go to Snowflake if they finally release it in a 38 or 39mm size.
Yeah. Question or comment here. Randy says, my theory is that raising the prices commits them to that price point, and if demand falls, they're hosed. And yeah, that's why they're not throwing the Daytona's price up by 50% at retail. I mean, if they move it up, it's going to move 3, 4, 5% at most, if they even do it. Yeah, just because the aftermarket is demanding these higher prices right now doesn't mean that the retail market could handle that long term.
Marketing wise, the bigger the gap, the better. It makes sense for Rolex not to increase prices, because the bigger the gap between retail price and pre-owned price, you know what I mean, the better it is for the brand name at the moment. So it doesn't make sense for, I used to think this, and this is why I'm saying I was definitely wrong, but for Rolex to increase retail prices to get closer to the pre-owned prices, which is way higher than retail right now, it just doesn't make sense from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah.
The further the gap, the better.
Watch Display says, buy gold Rolex and you won't have to wait. Problem solved. If you guys don't follow him on Instagram, he has some beautiful gold Rolex watches. An awesome collection. Do you think that the limited supply has strongly affected people towards buying gold? I'm guessing it has a little bit, but I don't think that it's been an overwhelming response because it's so much more expensive. And I think there's this price point barrier for the average person that can afford any Rolex at all, that they're not going over 10 grand. So maybe they're selling a little bit more two-toned. Maybe they're getting a few more bucks out of someone's pocket than that they'll go for a two-tone instead of a solid gold. But I mean, I'm never going to go buy a, $35,000, $40,000 day date. That's just way outside the realm of possibility for me.
I mean, it goes back to the point of people want what they can't have. Buy a Datejust, problem is also going to be solved. But I feel like, first of all, gold and stainless steel watches are very different market, very different people who want these. Of course, the people who want to be flashy, they will happily go with a gold Rolex, but the stainless steel is what they can't get, and that's why people are after it. If it was gold that they can't get, that was probably going to be the trend. You know what I mean? Like the Patek Philippe Nautilus, the 5711, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you could buy it at retail, maybe even under retail. You know what I mean? But when it started getting harder to get, all of a sudden it became insane. You know what I mean? You have people like Robert Downey Jr. He literally said he thought the Patek Nautilus was a Seiko. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure, even though he doesn't need the money, if he finds out what's happening with the market of that watch, he will look at it differently. It's hard for you to not look at things differently when they go crazy in prices. For example, the Timex Q. I'm just gonna go back to this watch because it's actually been bugging me a little bit. If that watch wasn't hyped and so insane that people were after it, people would have been looking at it differently. You know what I mean? I personally,
if they would have made like a million of them and they were in like every single shopping mall and every single department store, would it have been the same response?
Not at all. You know what I mean? And there has been insane, like, people are going, like, they're like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I'm like, it's kind of not. You know what I mean? It's cool, but I'm going to be honest, it's kind of not. It was just hype. The Blue Alpinist, I didn't sell it for profit. I did get profit on it, but I absolutely was disappointed when I got that watch. You know what I mean? Because
You sold it, right? You don't even have it anymore.
I sold it like 2 days later. Like, I wanted to return it, but Hodinkee didn't have a great return policy. Different story. But I have been like, people were like, oh, you just want to profit and stuff like that. No, I've been waiting for a Blue Alpinist. I made prediction videos a year before they came out with the Blue Alpinist, and I said they're gonna come out with it because it makes sense. I didn't buy into the hype. I was just genuinely waiting for this Blue Alpinist, and I was super disappointed. You know what I mean? If I played with the hype, and if I kind of saw the hype, and I was after the hype, I would have looked at it differently. I would have been like, like this is the coolest thing ever. You know what I mean? And it happens to everybody. It happens. I don't care if people like, I don't have an ego. I will admit that I started looking at the Nautilus differently when I saw what the prices went for. You know what I mean? It's just hard. It's human nature. You're just gonna, when something becomes so hyped and in demand and everybody wants it, you just tend to look at it differently. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah. You get kind of like riled up. It's like mob mentality and the excitement. Sure, yeah, I get it. Here's one non-Rolex question. Why do you think Breguet is not given much love from watch collectors? I mean, I don't really like the watch designs personally. You know, from my perspective, I can look at like, I don't know, Type 20 or Type 21 chronograph, and I think like I'd rather have a Speedmaster. It's way more affordable, and I think it's better looking. I can look at what's their dive watch, the Marine something, and I can point to you know, a Seamaster or a Submariner and say, you know, I think those watches look better. So for me, that's what it's all about. The watch collector community in general, you know, I don't really know. What are your thoughts on this?
First of all, it's kind of funny you brought this up because a few days ago I was trying to convince you to buy the Type 20. Uh, but I think it's not hyped. I think design wise, because it's very hard for Breguet to compete with their designs. Their designs are very old school. And by old school, I mean not even the cool vintage what everybody's after now. No, it is very old school, which makes sense. They're one of the oldest watchmakers in the world, you know, or yeah, one of the oldest watchmakers in the world. Their designs never changed, which is, you know, good. But unfortunately, contrary to belief, I don't think they were timeless. You know, I think our generation, or the, you know, what, yes, our generation, we're not, um, we're not receiving those designs as well as they used to. Unlike the Submariner, which proved to actually be timeless. Not you see, here's the thing I tend to find with a lot of people: just because it is a classy dress watch doesn't mean it makes it timeless. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, there's a specific Patek Calatrava with Roman numerals. I can't remember the reference. I don't think that watch is timeless. You know what I mean? For something to be timeless, I don't care what design it is. If it's a Richard Mille, okay, I don't care if it's a crazy design. I don't care if it's a simple design. Timeless means it survived until, you know what I mean, from when it was conceived until now. Of course, we can't see the future. Maybe the Submariner will prove that it's not timeless in the future. But from when it was made until our point, that it's been something that people find, I can't find the word, but you know what I mean. My only problem with Breguet, I love them. I love their watches. I mean, their marketing is terrible, absolutely terrible.
I like this one. I'm gonna bring up a picture here of it if I can find one real quick. Here we go. The
Beautiful.
well, what do they call this? I think it's like the Grand Classique or something. I do like that. I do think it's kind of a timeless design, but I get why a lot of people wouldn't. I mean, the K shape is kind of
Bland.
unimpressive, kind of bland. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Maybe it's just the moon phase. There's something about seeing a moon phase with like a small seconds that is just
No.
appealing. I don't know.
So I'm gonna say this. Here's the problem with this design. So many cheap watches have this design now. You know what I mean? I understand there, people are gonna say the same, like the Submariner, stuff like that. To me, this looks cheap. First of all, that face on the moon phase. Why do companies do that? It
With
it's
a little
so
happy, like,
cheesy. Yeah, it's so cheesy. It's so cringy when I see that face. You know what I mean? Why is there a face on the moon? You know, you're trying to make a serious dress watch, then you have this smirking moon just looking at me. You know what I mean?
it's
It
it's
makes no
it's the man in
sense.
the moon. Don't you know the man in the moon thing?
Yeah, but the man isn't the moon.
Yeah,
You
well,
know? Um, but it kind of looks like a Timex to me personally. I feel like that's why, like I said, Breguet, when even with their crazier watches, they went like either too classical, is that, yeah, too classical, or too crazy. Like look at their sports watches, 45 millimeter, like big gold, like it's crazy. They didn't find their middle happy ground. You know what I mean?
yeah.
They didn't find something. And also their marketing. They're just, a brand right now is as strong as their marketing. The only way a brand will, like Grand Seiko has always been amazing. But there's a reason why they only started getting popular in the last year. You know, I'm gonna say it. They've only been insanely popular this past year. All of a sudden, everybody wants a Grand Seiko, including myself. Why? Because they finally understood that marketing is insanely important as the product. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If not more important than the product. You can make a whole. And I'm just gonna bring out the, MVMT, Daniel Wellington. Terrible product, phenomenal marketing, everybody bought it. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Same with all these brands. You have Omega surviving, Breguet. You know, uh, they don't have that marketing genius in their arsenal. I'm sorry to say, I'm sorry if you work for Breguet's marketing. You know, I'm super sorry, but you need to think out of the box to save that brand, because
Now,
it will be a shame for that brand to die.
now here's something about marketing. I've heard people complain about Tudor would be a good example, and their ambassadors, and they say,
Hmm.
"Oh, I don't want to pay for their ambassadors. Their watches are so expensive because of their marketing." Here's the
Hmm.
thing, though. That marketing creates brand equity. And if you care
Hmm.
about resale value of your watches at all, you're buying a piece of that brand equity. And the other important thing is when they create brand equity, they create brand longevity. And if you're buying an expensive watch that is going to need potentially, service and maintenance over the course of years and years, and if you want to send it to the manufacturer for that service, you want them to be around. There's a
Hmm.
reason why that marketing is important to you as a consumer, other than to just, kind of trick you into spending money. So,
Hmm.
um, to your point about talking about like companies that are really good at marketing, people shouldn't be upset that
Hmm.
these companies have a big marketing budget. That's a
Hmm.
good thing.
You know, here's the thing I'm gonna say about that. Serious independent watchmaker collectors, but I'm talking serious, not people who are buying into the hype and buying the FB Journe Chronometer Blue because it became hyped. I'm talking about serious independent watchmaker collectors. Will all say this, and I'm gonna speak for everybody. The first thing they look at when they're investing into an independent watchmaker is who that independent watchmaker is and what they are as a brand. Why? Because there's so many independent watchmakers that will rise and then just die out of nowhere. All of a sudden, your watch that you invested so much into this watchmaker, into their brand, died. You know what I mean? There's a reason why FB Journe is very popular now, because people see the brand like their equity. You know what I mean? They see how powerful this brand is performing on the secondary market. You know what I mean? FP Journe, although indirectly had great marketing with Hodinky and stuff like that, the results are the same. They became so like the FP Journe Chronometer Blue is selling over retail. The regular watches are probably are most of them are selling at retail. You know what I mean? They have a lot of watches that are selling above retail and at retail. Therefore, a lot of people are investing and realizing FP Journe. But then you have a lot of brand speak Marion. I can't remember the brand. People used to love this brand about 3 to 5 years ago. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, that brand just flat out died. Even the owner, he's the owner of one of the owners of Stoic, which is a micro brand now that utilizes Miota movements. You know, nothing wrong with all of a sudden running a micro brand, but what happened to his people who invested in his watches? You know what I mean? Like you said, Guy, people need to realize that marketing is very, very important to when you're buying a watch, because you want this brand to survive. You want your watch 10, 20 years from now to be worth something. You know what I
I
mean?
do.
There's
Yeah. If you're going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on it, you
Mhm.
mean, even from the perspective of if no other reason, like, oh, I'm never going to sell my watch, so the value doesn't matter. Well,
Mhm.
someday you're going to pass on, and hopefully you have someone to give that watch to, and they might not like the watch, but at least you're giving them something of value that
They might
people.
need the money. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? They
Yeah.
might need the money. And here's the thing, I know I hate talking about money when it comes to watches, but realistically, the brand does matter. You know what I mean? And not in a sense that, oh, I have a Rolex kind of matter. No, you're investing into this brand, into their future, and you're investing from, of course, you're looking at their past, but you're also investing in their future. You know what I mean? I would have never bought my Grand Seiko if I didn't finally have faith in their future. End of the story. I've always liked Grand Seiko. I've always loved the Snowflake, but their marketing was terrible. But the direction I see them take the brand forced me to buy a very expensive Grand Seiko. You know, and not forced me, I'm sorry, but motivated me to be like, okay, I see the future of this brand now. I
No,
understand
no,
its
no. They
past.
came to your house and were like, "AB, you're gonna buy a damn Grand Seiko. You got no choice."
But here's the thing: I wouldn't have bought the Grand Seiko, and I will happily admit this, when their marketing was terrible. Quite frankly, the best thing they've ever done was start collaborating with people like Hodinkee and stuff like that, with authorized dealers that are very popular, you know, like Timeless Luxury and so on. Their marketing has been getting better. There's a lot of things that would improve. I'm just gonna say it right now. Stop doing discounts. I know a lot of people will be like, why don't you want the discount? It's because if you want their brand, you know, to if you want your watches to be like Rolex, where you barely lose any money, they need to stop offering discounts. But anyway, that's a different thing. If they did not fix their marketing, I wouldn't have invested in their watches. You know, even though
Sure.
I love the watch so much, there's a lot of brands I would love to buy their watches, but something about their brand makes me uncomfortable about buying a watch from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right, let's hit one more question. It's almost 8 o'clock, and I know you have some plans tonight. So this was fortuitous because I had mentioned that I wanted you to remind me about this
Oh, yeah.
topic. Think
Oops.
everybody should forget about Rolex and concentrate on other better brands' watches. Give us one or two other watches that you think people should concentrate on. We also have a super chat that came in, so we'll address that too before we sign off. So we'll have this in with the super chat question.
JLC, anywhere from the 90s to mid 2000s. Absolutely. I am biased, but the quality of their watches from around 1995 to about 2008, their watches, the quality is incredible. I know that I had the Master Moonface. The quality compared to this Master Geographic, by the way, I'm wearing it on a NATO. I know people will hate that, but anyway, the quality of that Master Moonface compared to this one from 1995, this one far surpasses it. Maybe not movement wise, although the movement, the Caliber 929 is a very solid movement. It the quality just far surpasses it. So JLC anywhere from mid 90s to mid 2000s. Of course, Grand Seiko. Grand Seiko, their marketing has become incredible. Therefore, you can comfortably buy one now. Millions of Grand Seiko I could recommend to you guys, but start safe. If you want to not lose that much money, you will lose a little bit because they're still working on their brand. The Snowflake, you know I said the SBJ 415 would be my choice, but that's because I'm biased. But realistically, the safest bet is their icon. You know what I mean? Which is the Snowflake.
I think that's actually I think that's really a good point. Is you look at brands that are successful that have an iconic watch, and you almost can't go wrong. You know, you almost can't go
Yeah,
wrong with the Speedmaster or the
exactly.
Snowflake or whatever.
Hey, let me say this actually. I just want to go back to Breguet. That's also one of their problems. They don't have an icon. I know people will say, "Oh yeah, they're what is that? Their Type 20 or something is an icon." No, when you think of Breguet, at least for me personally, and I'm sure a lot of people, you don't think of a specific icon. You say Omega to me right now, Speedmaster in my head immediately. You say Rolex, Submariner in my head immediately. Grand Seiko, even though I have a different one, Snowflake. You know what I mean? Brands with icons typically tend to be more appreciated. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You even have collectors who specifically collect icons. But you told me two brands, JLC, Grand Seiko. I will add. I have so many to add, but I'm trying to. I'm trying
Well,
to think.
we gotta get to the super chat question. So
Okay.
throw one more out there real quick. What's your third final off from off the cuff choice?
Oh God, don't do this to me.
You're on the spot.
Um. Um. Oh no. Mm, no, that's way too expensive. Are we keeping it within under $10,000 or
I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's just something people should concentrate on, I guess.
100% Langa? 100%. Forget about Patek Philippe. Okay, Langa. There you
Yeah,
go.
I know you like Langa a lot more than you like Patek, so that's actually not surprising. So the
Yeah.
super chat from Ammon, is that how we pronounce that? Going back to the discussion about the marketing and watch values and whatnot. The whole discussion assumes that your watch collection value is more than a rounding error in your net worth and what you will pass on. And then he continues to mention his watches are worth very little compared to what I'll pass on. So I don't care if they retain value. Watches are not an investment to me. I don't know how this would work for everybody, but what I might pass on to say my immediate children, if I had children, which I don't, is not what I might also leave to, let's say, my nephew or my nephew's children or something. You know what I mean? So like leaving somebody a $10,000 watch is better than leaving them nothing because you're giving everything to your immediate children. So I understand where you're coming from, but I think I would disagree that the value of the watch in the context of what you might leave to somebody else, it depends on who you're leaving it to. It depends on how much you have to leave to people outside of the immediate scope of, you know, your basically children is what most people are concerned about.
So first of all, shout out to Amin. I actually know exactly what's in his collection. I watched a few of his videos. I understand why he said this collection because, this question, because his collection shows that he actually really loves watches. He has like a Breguet. He has this really cool 5-day Power Reserve Christopher Ward and stuff like that. I completely understand where he's coming from, but in the same time, he does have a lot of good what do you call it, pass on watches. You know, he has a Rolex Datejust, he has a GMT, he has a JLC Master Sector dial. You know what I mean? So it's, if you have a big collection like him, yeah, it makes sense for you not to care as much about watches to pass on, because there's a few watches in there. But if you don't care at all, I probably, if you have nothing that you can pass on, I mean, it depends on the person. I mean, if the person doesn't care about, you know, it doesn't plan to have kids or anything, doesn't care about like cousins or like nephews or something, yeah, sure, you know what I mean. But someone like me, my end goal is 4 watches. I want those 4 watches to be significant. I want those 4 watches that I will be comfortable to give to my future kids, hopefully if I have some, that I will give them, or somebody important to me, to my family. I want to be able to pass them on, because mechanical watches, the beauty of them is their art. Art is meant to last forever. You know what I mean? That's the beauty of art. Of course, not for, we're not going to talk about like end of the world and stuff, but these mechanical watches, the reason we love them beyond their, like, beyond loving them because they're mechanical, why do we love mechanical more than quartz? Because quartz lifetime is not meant to, quartz isn't meant to last a lifetime. Whereas mechanical watches, you take care of them, they're meant to last a lifetime. That's why a lot of us love mechanical watches so much. Should you buy a mechanical watch that won't be good to pass down, the person who's gonna get it won't keep that watch alive. You know what I mean? Won't be motivated if they don't. If you pass on something, let's say, that has no significance, you know, it's an Invicta, for example. Sorry, everybody. They're not gonna be motivated to keep that watch alive, to keep it going. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry to say this. I mean, you guys know I don't love Rolex. Rolex is, you know, I have millions of brands before I can say Rolex is my favorite. But one thing I do know about that Rolex is, once I pass it down, this person, hopefully Rolex keeps their, you know, their marketing. This person will be so proud of this watch, they're gonna want to keep it alive. They're gonna service it. They're gonna spend money to service, to keep it alive, until they pass it on to the next person, and then to the next person, and it will be a lifetime thing, which is nice to know, that you buy something that not only you can enjoy in your lifetime, but another person can enjoy. Another person can enjoy. There's watches in my collection, for example, my Grand Seiko. I don't know if my kids will, you know, by the time I have kids, Grand Seiko will be something. You know what I mean? Maybe Grand Seiko will die for some reason. When I pass this watch on to my kid, he won't be motivated to fix it. It will just end up in a drawer somewhere, and it will just be a waste. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my perspective on why psychologically it's important to me that a brand holds its value for a long time. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
It's not just monetary. It's also the feeling that you bought something that future generations can still enjoy and utilize. You know what I mean?
Well put. I definitely agree with you. And of course, thanks for the super chat, Amin. I appreciate that very much. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today, because AB has a hot date or something he's got to go to, and we're already 7 minutes past 8. So sorry if you're running late, but as always, thanks for joining me, and thanks to everyone in the comments. I know we didn't get to them all. We never do, but we try our best. Any final words before we sign off?
No, thank you so much for having me. I genuinely enjoy these live chats. It's nice to interact with everybody on like a more relaxing setting, you know?
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys, well, we're going to wrap this one up for today. So, yeah, hopefully we'll get a chance to do this sometime next week. And until then, bye now.